don't know if we'll finish or not, but we have a great God, don't we? All right, and we ought to be very thrilled about the great God we have. In order to be grounded in our faith, it's a good thing, it's a very beneficial thing to have some understanding. I don't know that we could ever fully understand God. I mean, He is God. He is infinite. We are finite. We can't understand Him fully. But to understand, have an understanding, at least in some part, of the character and the personality of the God of the Bible. All right? As I said last week, some say we all worship the same God, we just call Him by different names. No, that's not true. We're talking about the God of the Bible here. We talked about how we worship a powerful God. Remember that? How that His power is seen in His awesome creation. We talked about all those different variables that scientists say if these things were just off by a small margin, then life as we know it would not even be able to exist. We talked about the constant of the strong nuclear force, weak nuclear force, gravitational force, electromagnetic force, ratio of electromagnetic force constant to gravitational force constant, and and how all these things in design show us that there had to be a creator. Brother Toby, you like cars, right? What's your favorite car? A Chevelle. What model? 68. What color? Black 68 Chevelle. Would you like one? I mean, would you like one that's in mint condition? Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you how to get one. I want you to go get a stick of dynamite. All right? Go out to the junkyard. Place it in the middle of a bunch of cars. Might need 2 sticks. All right? Light the fuse and then run. That's going to explode. All right? And when all the dust settles, there's going to be a mint condition Chevelle out there. Do you believe that? No. Why not? What if I brought you, what'd you say, a 68? A 68 Chevelle, and I said, Toby, you would not believe this. The 68 Chevelle, making it black, just everything you like, furry dice from the mirror and everything. Just all of a sudden, it was there. I mean, it just came, it created itself, Toby. What would you say to me? You're nuts. That's usually what he says about me, but in that case, he'd be saying it to me. Now, why, Toby, would you say that's nuts? Just don't happen. Seeing a Chevelle, you know that someone had to make it, right? Put together all the parts. It's just, you don't get order out of chaos. And to see how our creation is fine-tuned. And there are those we mentioned last week that believe in something called a multiverse theory, that there are an infinite amount of universes even now being created, and we lucked out by being in the one that happened to have everything just perfect. Now, all those things we talked about last week, a list of these different forces that have to be within a certain margin for life to even be in existence. If just one of those things were outside of those small margins, life wouldn't even exist. Design demands that there was or is a designer. Creation demands that there had to be a creator. And that creator is our God. What takes more faith? To believe that a creator created everything, or that everything just randomly happened? Okay, let me say that differently. Because to believe one with no evidence, that's not faith. Remember, that's not what faith is. That's just blind belief. We talked about the man, and I can't remember who it was. Sasha may remember, that said, even if all the evidence points towards there being a creator, and by the way, the evidence does point towards that, he said, even if it does, we cannot open the door for a chance of there being the divine. You remember who said that, Sasha? I don't remember the name either. I think it was Steve. I'm not sure though. No. So that we can't even crack the door open for that possibility, even if that's where the evidence is pointing. We have this incredibly powerful God, and His power is seen in His creation. His power is seen, we said, in His authority. His power, we mentioned, is seen in His ability. He is able to do anything He wishes to do. That's His omnipotence. Nothing is too big for my God to accomplish, and nothing is too little for my God, or for Him to use in accomplishing it. We talked about His omniscience. He knows everything that He desires to know. He's everywhere. He is omnipresent. That means the Christians on the other side of the planet, He is with them, and yet He is with me at the same time. As a child of God, I am in His presence. Proverbs 15:3, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding the evil and the good. I cannot hide from Him, neither am I hidden from Him. In other words, I'm doing wrong, and I say, well, I'll go in here and turn the lights out. He'll never see me. No, God sees me. But when I'm over here striving to serve Him and to please Him, you know what? I'm not hidden from Him, even when I think, man, God can't see me. No, He does. He's everywhere. Omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. We mentioned how we serve a perfect God. We worship a perfect God. He's perfect in His oneness. We mentioned the atheists say there is no God. Agnostics say we cannot know whether there is a God. Polytheists say there are many gods. Pantheists say God is in everything, so everything is a part of God. God says, is there a God beside me? Yea, there is no God. I know not any. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I am God, and there is none else. I am God, and there is none like me. He says that in several verses there in different chapters of Isaiah. In Deuteronomy 6:4, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord. Wow, we worship this perfect God. He's perfect in His oneness. He's also perfect in His holiness. When Moses and Job and Isaiah saw glimpses of God through visions, the overwhelming attribute they speak of is His holiness. This attribute ought to create within us an awe and an admiration. Let's read Psalm 113 right quick before I get to doing that. Listen to this chapter here. Praise ye the Lord. Praise, I tell you, let's do it responsibly. I'll read the first, you read the second, we'll do it together like that. Praise ye the Lord. Praise, O ye servants of the Lord. Praise the name of the Lord. Blessed be the name of the Lord from this time forth and forevermore. From the rising of the sun unto the going down of the same, the Lord's name is to be praised. The Lord is high above all nations, and His glory above the heavens. Who is like unto the Lord our God, who dwelleth on high, who humbleth Himself to behold the things that are in heaven and in the earth. He raiseth up the poor out of the dust, and lifteth the needy out of the dunghill, that He may set him with princes, even with the princes of His people. He maketh the barren woman to keep house, and to be a joyful mother of children. Praise ye the Lord. Boy, when we read the book of Psalms, we see that often, that we are to praise God, and what a powerful God He is. We said that He is perfect in His holiness. Then we just briefly mentioned, and I want to get into this a little more here, God is perfect in His righteousness and in His justice. This is very important. Righteousness, that is His imposing on mankind righteous laws or demands. His justice, the carrying out of the penalties attached to those laws, both of these are the evidence of His holiness when dealing with men. And these doctrines are the ones that ought to develop within us a fear and a reverence towards our God. Yes, He is our Father, but He is a holy, just, righteous God. And they should also encourage us. God will only do what is absolutely right all of the time. Our God is not going to make a mistake. Further, our God is not going to do wrong because He is perfect in His righteousness and in His justice. Genesis 18:25, shall not the judge of all the earth do right? Deuteronomy 32:4, He is the rock, His work is perfect, for all His ways are judgment, a God of truth and without iniquity, just and right is He. In our society, there is a line of thinking, a philosophy, an idealism called relativism. There's a cultural relativism, and they actually teach, and this is taught in universities and schools, that there is no right or wrong answer. There's no right or wrong answer. There is a conventionalism, which is a form of relativism, says there is a right and wrong, but it varies from one society to another. What's right in one society may be wrong in another society, and so forth. The majority rules, and morality simply becomes what is legal. Now, let me tell you what kind of mindset that develops. With that mindset, anyone who points to what is wrong in society is a criminal. After World War II, many of the Nazis were placed on trial. And their standard line of defense, many of them, was this right here: we were just following orders. This was legal, and since it was legal, it must have been right. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because the law said to do this, then it must have been right. This is what the people voted on. This is what our government led us to do. Therefore, that must be right. But with that mindset, anybody who points to what is wrong in society becomes a criminal. There's something called ethical subjectivism. It's another type of relativism. In this view, the individuals decide what is right and wrong for themselves and for themselves only. Morality is nothing more than personal preference and opinion. Now, here's what it's saying. Brother Brandon, you decide what is right and wrong for you. And I'll decide what is right and wrong for me. And whatever you decide is neither right nor wrong. It's just okay. It's whatever. If you say it's right for you. But if I say it's right for me. Now let me explain something here. And I'm taking a few minutes to explain it because your children, if they're in the public school system, if they go to a secular university, they're going to be taught some of these lines of thinking here. That truth is something that's arbitrary. You decide what truth is. So let's say Brandon believes that, and he goes around and he preaches, hey, what I think is right for me. What you think is right for you. Well, let's say that I think it's right for me to go to his house and take his car. Well, he can't say it's wrong. Because for me, it's right. Do you understand the problems with that line of thinking there, folks? The relativism, it falls apart under the weight of its own arguments. There's this ethical, or I just said that, subjectivism, where morality is nothing more than personal preference or opinion. There's something called objective morality, which is what we would believe. Here's what that is. Morals contain a sense of obligation and oughtness that is universal, authoritative, and outweighs considerations of culture, time, and place. In other words, What we as followers of Christ believe is that what is right, what is wrong, despite what time it is, despite what the culture says, despite what society says, despite what our government says, what's right, and what's wrong is wrong. Morals are prescriptions for behavior and motive that have a force of command. If there's a moral, there is a force of command behind that moral. Morals have a source. Unless they're just arbitrary, what's right for you is right for me, or right for you is right for you, what's right for me is right for me. But we believe that morals, what is right and what is wrong, has a source. What is that source? Is it just what we think? Because morals deal with purpose and will, the source of those morals must have a purpose and will. If morals, what's right and wrong, is universal, if it transcends individuals, in other words, it's not something that I just dream up my preference. So if it's universal, it transcends individuals, it transcends society, it transcends time. In other words, those morals, they are always the same. They are unchangeable. Good is always good. Bad is always bad. If that's true, then the source of those morals must be universal and transcendent as well. Listen to this verse. Romans chapter, as a matter of fact, turn to Romans chapter 2 if you would for just a moment. Because boy, what an awesomeness we see of our God right here. Romans chapter 2, we're going to look in verses 14 and 15. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, now the law he's talking about there, the Old Testament law, the commandments of the law. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves. Now, let me stop here for a minute. He says, look, even the Gentiles that do not have our law, they live our law out. Even they who do not have the law of God, there's something within them to where they know that stealing is wrong, and they know that murder is wrong. Verse 15, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. So let me ask a question. If there is not a God, where does the sense of right and wrong come from? How do we, for the most part, universally know what is right and wrong? If there's not a God, then where in the world does guilt come from? Because look, if there's not a God, there's not a moral lawgiver. If it's all up to what I feel is right or wrong, then if I feel it's okay to steal something, I should not feel guilty over that. Does that make sense? But I do. I am the world's worst liar. I can't hardly tell a joke sometimes because if it's one of those I'm just trying to pull something over on somebody, I can't hardly do it because I feel this extreme guilt over telling a lie. Moral laws come from a moral lawgiver. If there is a right and wrong that we by our own nature know there's a right and wrong, that had to come from somewhere, folks. That just didn't happen. Morals. Some would say, well, where do those morals come from? Are they based on God's personal opinion or fiat? In other words, is God determined, okay, this is going to be good and this is going to be bad? Because if he did, he could have just as easily chosen, well, no, this is going to be bad and that's going to be good. Some have said, well, then is goodness, morality, is that something outside of God that God yields himself to? Well, if that's the case, God is not sovereign. Listen, here's where morals, this right and wrong, come from. I want to tell you where they come from. They come from God. Our God who is perfect in his righteousness. Moral or morality is a reflection of the character of our God. Morality is grounded in the character of God. Goodness is not something external to God. It's not something that he has authority over. It is a reflection of who he is. That which corresponds to God's character is good. Look, that's why, okay, Jesus, he said, love God, love your neighbor. On these two things hang all the law. All the Old Testament law was an unpacking for the Jews of those two things. Love God, love your neighbor. Here's what it looks like. All the law was that. So when our children are making fun of someone with a disability, what do? We tell them, hey, don't do that. Why do we know that's wrong? That's a violation of God's second command there of loving your neighbor as yourself. That's not displaying love. He is perfect in his righteousness. That's how man knows what is right and wrong, because what is right and wrong comes from God. And anything that corresponds to the character of God is good. And if it does not correspond to the character of our God, then it is bad. Not only is he perfect in his righteousness, he is perfect in his faithfulness. He's immutable. It's a big word for meaning he does not change. Listen to Malachi 3:6. For I am the Lord, I change not. Hebrews 13:5. He hath said, I, now get this, will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Boy, isn't that a good verse right there? That means when old boneheaded Ronnie Wise gives in to a temptation to sin, though that is wrong, my God does not leave me. Hey, is that good, folks? Hebrews 13:8. Jesus Christ, the same yesterday and today and forever. We change, don't we? Now, and when I say change, God, he may change his methods, but he in his character does not change. We change. How many, don't raise your hand, please, right here. I wonder how many ladies have thought, he's not the same man that I married. And I'm not talking about he's 70 pounds heavier. He's just, he's not the same man. How many men have thought, well, she's not the same lady I married. I mean, she was so sweet and kind and all that. And now, oh, my, she's the devil. But our God is perfect in his faithfulness. Listen to this. I want to tell you something else about our God. We worship a personal God. Listen, he is not just a force or a being. He acts, he thinks, he loves. He is a person. Jeremiah 29:11. Listen to this. Here's what he's telling the children of Israel. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord. Here's what kind of thoughts he was thinking towards them. Thoughts of peace and not evil, to give you an expected end. Now, the Bible tells me that my God is no respecter of person. And if he has thoughts that he thinks towards them, let me tell you something, that guarantees us he has thoughts that he thinks towards us. That means, Ross Head, God thinks about you. Sandra Head, God thinks about you. Am I the only one that is amazed by that? That God would think about me? Hey, it thrills me. It tickles me pink. Sometimes just somebody out of the blue sends me a text. Hey, preacher, just praying about you. Had you on my mind. I think, wow. Man, they were thinking about me. Anybody else ever feel that way? Or some of you might think, oh, another text. Somebody writes a letter to you, or you get a card or something, and you think, oh, Sister Diane, she sends a card, has a couple bookmarks in it with some Bible verses and some little inspirational sayings, and I save a whole lot of those things because I think, wow, that's a good one. And when I get that, I think, wow, somebody thought about me. But now, which way do I want to go? I'll go this way. Dixie, check this out. What are you laughing at? Dixie, check this out. The God who spoke everything. You go out tonight, and I want you to look in the sky. Is it cloudy? It's not cloudy, is it? Okay. Yeah, okay. You love seeing stars. Okay. Well, here, let me clobber you. You'll see stars. No, look, you go outside, look in the sky. You see all those stars as far as your eye can see. Okay? The God who put all those in their place, who controls the orbits of everything, this God who fine-tuned this universe. Now check this out, Dixie. This God thinks about Dixie Gallagher. What? Is that amazing? Hey, God thinks about Brandon Gallagher. He thinks, why in the world is he wearing his jacket in here? It's warm. Just kidding, Brandon. His personality, this personality of God, it's seen in his titles. In Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. That word for God there in the Hebrew is Elohim. It means the absolute and supreme force or source of everything that is. That's our God. The absolute and supreme source of everything. In Exodus 3:14, and God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am has sent me unto you. He told Moses, hey, who do I tell him sent me? He said, just tell him I am sent you. He is the self-existent one. Never created. He just is. He is God. In Exodus 6:3, he gives the name Jehovah. He provides the children of Israel with a name to use in their special relationship with him. In Deuteronomy 10:17, he gives himself the title of God of gods and Lord of lords. He's above all rulers and world powers, both spiritual and physical, our God. Listen to this, Matthew 6:26. Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns. Yet anybody know the next two words? Heavenly Father feedeth them. Are ye not much better than they? He said, I am your heavenly Father. By the way, he's a good Father. He said, if I'll make sure the sparrows are fed, do you not think I'm going to take care of you? Listen to Romans 8:15. For ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear, but ye have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. The word Abba, it is a term of endearment. It's a term of affection. It's like saying daddy. He said, because I love you and because you have placed your faith in my Son, you become my child, and you can come to me and cry out to me like you cry out to your daddy. Listen, folks, we have this incredibly awesome God. If we're not careful, we get so busy in the day-to-day hustle, the rat race, that we forget all about him, don't we? Sometimes we don't even acknowledge him. Sometimes we think, oh, no, what am I going to do with this mess? We're going to rely on God. We're going to do what we can do. We're going to count on him to work through us. We're going to count on him to send the help that we need. We're going to count on him to give us the wisdom. Hey, we're just going to count on this God who is perfect in his power and in his wisdom. He's everywhere he desires to be. He created everything, and he sustains everything. He holds it all together. And he is a personal God that knows the numbers of the hairs on your head. He knows you by name. Listen, child of God, take heart, because we have an awesome and mighty and good God, don't we? Amen. Let's bow our head and close our eyes, please.